Welcome to the RD2BE podcast. Each week we sit down with a different registered dietitian nutritionist to showcase the diversity of opportunity in the dietetics profession. Our aim is to dismantle the notion that there is a traditional career path. I'm Carl Barnes, the registered dietitian behind the scenes of RD2BE.
And I am Jenna Warnock, the RD2BE host. Our RD guests share their stories, career paths, and advice to help students like us succeed in the profession. Welcome back to another week of the RD2BE podcast. I'm your host, Jenna, and this week we're going to be concluding the three-part series with Trenton Voss, who is a clinical dietitian out in Alaska and has been incredibly involved within the academy, really making the most of the RD credential in terms of, as we discussed before, like negotiating salary, really getting what is worth our pay as far as dietitians go, and really putting ourselves first when it comes to making the most out of that credential that these RD2Bs who are listening are pursuing. And so we're really excited to have Trenton come in yet again to kind of conclude this overall circle of the job search process for RD2Bs. And so, we started the first episode with just going over the dietetics journey of where to actually get yourself started, way to set yourself apart, then kind of progressing into applying to jobs. And then it's like, okay, once you get that job, great. Or not once you get that job, but once you kind of get the job interview, great. Now what do you do? And so this week, we're going to kind of talk about what best tips, tricks, and advice and things that Trenton used during the interview process that we think is really beneficial for all RD2Bs to know and to use when they're looking for their first dream job. So Trenton, thank you so much for joining us again.
Of course, happy to join.
All right, yeah. And so the first question is really just that preparation. And so say that they have that job interview scheduled. How should candidates prepare for an interview? And also kind of denoting that caveat between an in-person and a virtual setting.
Okay, so in preparing for it, the best way to do it is what I think is having a list, right? And you can reach out and ask the hiring manager, okay, do you have a set of questions that you typically ask? Because when the most successful interview that I had was the job that I have now. And what happened was she left me off with the questions, and I just went over the questions quite a few times before I actually ever did a main interview. So when I did an interview with the people who were at most interest, it was 3 total interviews. So the first interview was really interesting because I met with HR before I even met with the manager. So HR gave me we chat. I mean, we talked, and when we talked for about 45 minutes to an hour. So, but anyways, I did 3 interviews to get into the process. And the first initial part for me was that the HR rep offered me roughly 15 grand below what I was asking. And yeah. Can you imagine that? So 15 grand below what I was asking, and I didn't even think about it. I just said, yeah, I'd be willing to take it. Why not? Sure. And then we kept moving through it, kept asking me questions. Caveat on that, I wouldn't have settled for it. But I didn't want to limit myself quite then because we can start from there, even though in my interview, in my initial application, I always started high, right? I started high. Somebody hit me with, I mean, 15 grand lower, right? Which is crazy. And I was just like, yeah, sure. I mean, just let me in the door and then we can talk. So the biggest thing, I think the successful factor on that one was to allow myself the opportunity to speak to them, work from there. So I didn't immediately cut myself out being like, no, I wouldn't even take it, wouldn't even consider it. Because they answered the call. So there's something there, right? So they're willing to take some form of it, or they were intrigued. So since they were intrigued, I was like, let's do it. Let's go for it. So to be prepared, I went through the first interview, and then the second interview I had with the manager, and it was just a preliminary. She let me know, hey, we're gonna be in Alaska. Have you ever been in Alaska? I'm like, well, no, I've never done anything quite like this. It's kind of crazy. And we talked through the basics, the specifics, and then she's like, okay, so I want to push you through to another interview. On the third interview, you're going to meet with the whole team, and we all give you an official formal interview. So I went through two kind of informal interviews. And the first question was the HR manager kind of being like, here's what we're gonna offer you. I was like, okay. So my manager left me off with questions, and I think that's going to be probably one of the biggest assets I think any future RD can do too. Reach out to your manager and their or HR person and be like, okay, um, say it was the manager that called you. Hey, we want to set up an interview for you. I think it shows a lot of interest and a lot of forethought that a person would ask for questions that you usually ask. Because when I was going through the interview process, I was answering questions before they they asked them. So they took turns asking them, and then they're like, "Well, you kind of already answered it, but let's kind of dive deeper." And it showed like preparedness. It showed that I was willing to kind of put in the extra mile and show up and actually rehearse my answers. So in preparing for either or the in person or the if it's possible the in-person or the virtual, see if you can get a list of questions that you can get from your manager. So furthermore, if you go into the questions, you'll see basic questions that you can even go online and find a basic set of questions. Like when you're thinking about the questions too, I want you to practice them. I think that's probably the best thing that I ever did was when we're even as students when we're solving complex problems or we're trying to figure out MNT, get through our classes, we don't always have the answer right then and there, right? Sometimes we had to dig. Sometimes we had to sit there and stare at a wall, right? Look at it and just kind of ponder what the question could be. Pontificate, right? Pontificate. So it's like when you arrive at an answer, you have time to think about it. You have time to chew it over. So what I did was I took these questions and I really didn't study them. I just read them every once in a while, and I had 4 days, and that's it, right? Which wasn't very long, but that's okay. So I would read over them and just let them sit with me, right? I took my face out of a book, right? Um, I I took all the distractions away, and when I was doing monotonous things, driving around, I would just kind of sit there and imagine myself in the interview, and this kind of like having them play out the questions and me giving them the answers. I played out the questions and answered several different times, and it's like I never really had the answer during the interview, and I never wrote anything down because I didn't want to sound like a robot. I wanted to sound like a person. Um, so the best way to stay prepared for that is to be a person who considers the possible questions. Don't write anything down, but at least read questions, and then I don't know, go for a walk and think about it, right? There's a book called Mindsets by Carol Dweck, and she talks about how like when you're in specific types of learning, when you're really conscious to your learning patterns, the Pomodoro method works because you're 25 minutes on and you're sitting back for 5 minutes and letting yourself process the thoughts, right? And it's doing monotonous things, just like I don't know, going for a walk, taking a couple drinks of water, eating some food. It's not being distracted. Don't because your attention really doesn't work like that. I don't think that we can really multitask one thing at a time. So when I considered the questions, I was one step at a time, and I was always the question, just doing nothing and considering the possible answers to all of them. So why is this important, right? Because one of the questions that you get from everyone is tell us a little bit about yourself. And tell us a little bit about yourself is mundane, it's boring, it's no fun. It's like, okay, I have such a broad answer for that. What do I do? And I think a lot of us are really nervous. I'm nervous too, right? Like, like, tell me about yourself. Well, that's a that's a hard question. When I was born, yeah. So tell us about yourself. And this one's where it gets really good. So I did focus on that one for quite a while, and there's a lot of books that I read that kind of tell me about it's a mental reel that we play in our head is a story. Some of the most successful books, some of the most successful ways to get an idea out is through a story. That's how we remember things. We tell ourselves a story. It's a repeating pattern. Um, And if you learn to speak to people and you tell a story with that, you make a lasting impression. So I sat there and I considered, what is my story, right? How did I build my story? Where did it all start, right? So that's where I considered, and what is the story of my life and how can I put it into the job? So tell me about yourself. Well, I'm somebody who can work through complex problems, right? I had a problem with some books, or not books, laptops. I had problems with my car. I fixed it up. It's a 260,000 mile car. Um, I had problems with my bikes, and I learned all about bikes. So what I'm saying is that I learned everything about different ones, and this is just kind of a general overview, right? I learned about all of these different processes. I found something that was broken, fixed it up, made it better at a fraction of the cost. There was a point where I got so good at computers that I started turning around and selling them, right? So what I am is somebody who can take something that's broken, think about how I'm going to approach it, fix it up, and make it better, and then release it to the world, right? Or at least somehow make the my life better. And that's the story of my life is it's just that one thing, right? It's like saying, hey, I'm gonna leave out all the junk. You can see from my interview, from my paper, I graduated, from the University of Houston. I did this job, I did that job. But even with my jobs, I did kind of include some of that into my past jobs, right? Like, so for my problem solving, I noticed a problem at my past job with San Jack. And with that, I thought about it, I thought what I was gonna do, and boom, I made a process better and I promoted it to them, and they took it, and then the whole school started doing a whole process differently. And that's what I'm gonna bring to you, right? So it's this telling people a story rather than sitting there and regurgitating my life in such a way that I graduated, I did this job, I did this job, I did this job. Okay, but we have to make ourselves stand out. How can you stand out? Tell a story. Sit there, think about it. Like say you're a stay-at-home mom, right? And you went to school. Oh my God. Like, can you believe that I went to school? The entire time I was in school, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I took care of three kiddos. Okay, mind you, I know you guys know all about the disasters little kiddos can cause, right? So I took care of that. I managed my time effectively. I slotted things out. Um, I took care of all of my responsibilities as well. I worked a part-time job while I was there. This shows great time management, and I can bring that into you. I can bring that to you. I can show you these things, right? So I built a story, and it was based off of that one thing. And that's kind of how I did this too, right? Right? If you can't find things that you can build the story of your life to kind of give to somebody else, this will work too. Say, because I remember us talking earlier about, say, this student didn't really have time to put it all together, or just listening, they're just about to graduate. Oh my God, I don't know what to do. Watch this. You can make a functional resume off of your competencies. So all of your classes, all of your rotations are going to come with a set of competencies and projects. Let's make our lives easier. Take those competencies, take those projects from the internship, throw it into ChatGPT and say, give me a functional resume for all of these. Now, when you get the functional resume out, identify correlating things that you took from every one of them, right? So every part of the internship you did something, and everybody does something unique. Everybody, like I think the first step is recognizing that you are unique in some type of way. Having that first step is beautiful, right? When while we're trying to get the job, it's okay to build the ego up, but after you get the job, take yourself back down. That's very important, right? We spend an entire college career building our ego up so we can feel that we have the self-efficacy to get the job, just to let it all go so that we can hold the job and not let our egos run us through work. And you don't want to have an ego going into work. So building the self-efficacy to believe that you can get the job And yeah, you do have to talk a little bit about yourself. It's okay. It's okay. Show yourself. Some people, I've had such a hard time with this when I was working at San Jack, because I met so many talented young students who just had such a limited belief about themselves. Had they recognized how good they were, I mean, some of them were just, I mean, articulate, just very to the point. Very, like, I was sitting there, I'm like, you're amazing, right? Why are you choosing this? You could be doing this, but because of the limitations, right? It's okay to let some of that go so then you can see where you shine in certain areas and turn around and show these managers how you shine. But sometimes you need to look at it and say, this is where I shine. I'm going to start building the story of my life off of it, right? I mean, and it really is, it can be, if you've had no work experience, it can be during your interview. Um, I had two jobs. I had one job. I volunteered here. I was in this organization, and this is what I took out of it. It's just telling a story. Try to. That's the one thing I would say. Kind of get into your head, right? Because I definitely had the story when I was prepared for that, and then I had prepared for all the questions, which was really efficacious. It worked very well, and that's for both in person and virtual. Okay. So, because all of my interviews were virtual. Now, an important distinction, and me and a buddy here, we're talking, and he's a nurse manager here in Alaska, and he was like, "Well, the um, what was it? One of the managers, it was the church chief nursing officer, yeah. So they were applying for a chief nursing officer. They were interviewing. One of the applicants came in a full out suit, right? In a full out suit. And we're in Alaska, right? Like I show up to work in boots. A lot. I mean, it's raining. It rains 80% of the time here. I show up in boots. Okay. So you have to know the environment that you're going into and where you're interviewing, because that he even said, he was like, he was a great applicant, and but the upper administration were kind of a little taken aback. They were a little almost intimidated or offended because he showed up. Who's this guy showing up in a suit and tie, right? Who does he think he is? Those are words that they're actually saying. So when preparing for the right attire, have a way to figure out what the attire would be, right? When I did my interview, I mean, I was wearing a nice polo, and that's it, because kind of figured, right? Like Alaska, come on, let's um, you kind of gotta dress for the occasion, okay? Not to say you can't look nice, because you definitely can, but you don't want to overdress, you don't want to underdress. So great ways to do this. Just look online and look at the general geographical location. Um, I mean, that's my best way of doing it. Or if you're able to, go into the hospital and just kind of look around, see if you see somebody walking in there. So preparing there. So the attire is important. Don't overdress and don't underdress. Be well prepared for your questions, right? Be well prepared for your questions, but allow yourself to focus on them, but be passive about the focus while you're kind of building that story. Um, and let me see. Having a general idea when you go in there for money is a big deal too. Okay. So just be prepared to have what you expect for yourself and a reasonable number within the location that you're applying to.
No, definitely. And when it comes to building your story, would you recommend people to start with like their perceived greatest strength and asking themselves what story could I build based off of my biggest strength? Or as far as someone having a starting point for building their story, where would you recommend they look within?
Oh, that's wonderful. Great question. Strengths Finder, you can do that. Or I have a list of power words, right? Audacious, relentless. Just I write down, like, it's almost like affirmations, right? If you prepare yourself with reading good literature, great words, uplifting, positive. I mean, I'm really talking about thinking about the words. You definitely can play on your strengths and build that. Um, Gosh, that's how I got into my internship is because I used Strengths Finder and I wrote my internship. I wrote the gosh, what is that called? Um, my entrance letter, right? I built the whole thing based off of just of my strengths. Clifton Strengths Finder. That's what it was. Definitely. So you can build from your strengths and make the story from there. Definitely. So I'm resilient. Okay, I mean, my car broke down, and yet I knew I was going to be late for work. So what did I do? I got out of my car and I walked. I'm, man, I can handle my emotions very well. You want to know how I manage my emotions? So well that during my interview with Alaska, um, somehow a goat got in. So there was a goat just running around the house, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm at my aunt's house, and I'm like, they asked me a really hard question, and I'm like, okay, I can't really answer that. There's a goat in here. Let me go get that, right? So his name was Billy the goat, and they're like, "Oh my God, I got to see this." So I showed him a goat. Um, kind of off topic, but yeah, yeah, building off of your strengths. I mean, that really could be too, right? Talking about how you manage your emotions. People people don't leave jobs because of the jobs, they leave it because of the people, right? So when a manager is hiring you, they're thinking about how well you fit into their group, into their environment. So all of your skills, I want you to, it's okay to highlight them, but I want you to think about how what you bring in like emotionally. I'm thinking like soft skills, people skills, the ability to get along and work inside of a team. Oh man, that's huge.
Yeah, and when it comes to, and I think it's really great too, how you also open it up to, yes, you can go based off of your strengths, but also using power words or just overall uplifting affirmations where it is very flexible how you tell the story. And when you were giving your examples, you did mention a lot of, oh, and then tying into, say, time management. And then this is how this can really benefit whatever company that they're interviewing for. Does it matter when you tell your story whether or not you emphasize soft skills or hard skills or a mixture of both? Or do you think it depends on the job? Like, kind of when it comes to presenting your skills through the story that you tell, how you balance or touch on both?
That depends. I know somebody um who started as a critical care dietitian, so she's doing TPNs all day long. So that's another story. Wow. Like your hard skills have to come in for that. However, for most of the general population, I would say as a dietitian, as a new applicant dietitian, focus on the soft skills. We can focus on the soft skills because your hard skills, unless you're selling something, right? Unless you've sold something and you're like, I have numbers to tell you about, um, I'd say focus on the soft skills. Uh, I would also say watch this. So conflict management is huge. While I've been giving like interviews for the board because we do that, we do for the students anyways. We give them student interviews to take on the board new position. And what was startling to me was that some of the students um, kind of talked negatively about people. So another way you can be very prepared is to never talk negatively about your last job. That's huge. Why did you leave? Well, I left because my manager is a terrible person who didn't know how to manage anything, right? Or we got into an altercation. There's going to be a question that says, tell us about a time that you did not get along with someone and how you resolved it. Well, the worst, I think, because I've read somewhere, and I don't know the validity of this, but I read somewhere that said when you're speaking in an interview or to people in general, the way you talk about others reflects the same feeling that other people think about you. So if you focus it in a positive light, people are going to think positively about you. If you say a negative thing about your manager and how you didn't get along with your manager, do you think another manager wants to take that on? No. No. I had a let me tell you something. I'll do this. I had two instances that I brought up on conflict resolution. One is where I made a mistake. I found out what my coworker was making, and she was making more than me, and I've been working longer than her for 2 years. And I got so mad at my boss. I lost my cool with her, kind of, right? And when I lost my cool with her, she got back to me, and we kind of went back and forth. But what happened was, what I learned from that is that take a step back, whoa, breathe. You know, okay, I found out that somebody's making a little bit more than me. I'll go and I'll talk to my boss. It's not an instant reaction. And what that tells them is that I take the responsibility for the fact that me and my manager didn't get along, right? So that doesn't highlight that my boss is a terrible boss because, XYZ. Just like in conflict resolution, I had a problem with somebody on another time, right? And it was really both of us kind of going back and forth between each other. We didn't get along at all, but I didn't focus on how they were a bad person or how I was a bad person. How that was resolved was that, look, we never did come to see to eye on it. However, within our work sphere, we were always very nice to each other, and you would have never known that we had a problem. Because sometimes in a job, you're gonna have disagreements with people. You may not even like people, and I heard that whatever you don't like in someone is something you see in yourself. You're just projecting that. So, so inside of a workplace, if you find someone that you just bash heads against, don't bash heads against anybody. Let it all go. Let it all go.
think it also brings up a great point too with what you mentioned about how I find it so interesting where it's we apply for jobs because of the job description. And the job description says nothing about the people that you'll be working with, yet the people that you work with make or break, like with what you said, people don't leave jobs because of the work, they leave it because of the people. But I think you're bringing in lots of great skills and points as to even though you don't necessarily know or can prepare for the types of people that you'll be working with in that job, you can at least take responsibility and be proactive on what you can do, like whether it's
Mm.
like for example being good at conflict manage like resolutions, being good at showing you that you have interpersonal skills where when it comes to working well on a team, yes, there's a part of it too where, okay, sometimes personalities mesh and sometimes personalities don't. But I feel like there's still that like flexibility area where you can still, even if you don't know the people that you'll be working with, you can bring this flexibility of, okay, we may not jive like personality wise, but I still know how to be mature, can still make it again appear like everything's fine in the workplace. And I can keep these opinions I have on this person to myself. And so because that was something that I thought of as you were explaining it, but then the more you showed, hey, but these are the soft skills I have for, even though all I know is the job description and not the people on the job, I can be flexible and I can be mature for me being a good fit, even if I don't know the people I'll be fitting in with, so to speak.
Mm.
And so I think you bring up a lot of great points about it's not about, it is about doing your research for a job, of course, but you don't necessarily have to do every nook and cranny of knowing everyone in the workplace in order to be a good fit for that job.
Mm.
So I just wanted to
Yeah.
make that note because it's a really good point that you brought up.
Yeah.
And then was there anything else? Because I realized I had
No, no, no,
okay.
no, that was good. No, that was
Okay.
good. I appreciate it.
No,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah, because with the lag and stuff. But I think yeah, really focusing on the soft skills, especially for your first job into the dietetics profession as a registered dietitian, and going more into that as well with it being your first job. There's these jokes that you've seen online where it's like, oh, these jobs asking for 5 to 7 years of experience, entry level, and then it's like, oh, I haven't even, done a real job first yet. So, and you've talked about it a little bit when it comes to leveraging your past experiences for that first job application. But when it comes to in the interview on the fly, do you have pieces of advice for kind of pulling out your past experiences when asked about them for the interview? So, like, for example, you talked a little bit about if you're that student that didn't really prepare at all for, and again, like, not to say that in a negative way, but just wasn't able to really get involved until maybe their last year. And so now they're pulling from their dietetic internship to really show their skills, show their strengths in the interview process. But when it comes to that interview, you could maybe share your experiences of, well, when do you mention clubs? When do you mention that like barista job? Kind of when do you mention the experiences that you do have during that interview process, or when is it most advantageous?
You know, um, I didn't have a single job that really applied to dietetics. So I used one job, and that was at the San Jacinto College. Well, I take that back. I did substitute teaching, which I don't know if you've ever substitute taught, but that's another story. I did first graders, eighth graders. Eighth graders is a whole nother story too. Wow. Seniors are nice. Yeah. But yeah, using that depends. Okay, so say you're a bartender, right? The right time to bring that up is, I mean, when does it fit in your story, right? What kind of question? I mean, there's going to be questions about how about conflict resolution? Okay, so I worked at a bar, say, right? So I was a server at a bar or as a bartender at a bar. There was a fight between two people, right? And between the two people, I had to come in and I had to mediate, right? So when it comes to my job had leveraged me to be in an excellent place where I can have excellent customer service skills. So those customer service skills I can apply to when I'm taking care of my patients. Say if a patient is competitive, I know what not to do and what to do, because in my past job, what happened is this almost broke out in a fight, and I used my soft skills, I used my speaking skills to talk them down. And I think that's one ways I can help out too, right? So it's entirely dependent on like what your job experiences are and how they apply over. Because I applied for a clinical dietitian job. Not a single one of my jobs applied to being a clinical dietitian. Not one of them. But the life experiences that I learned, conflict resolution from the board, believe it or not, from how to manage kiddos who are completely, well, way out of the board, way out. I mean, those they can anything could happen with that. Taught me responsibility. Working on a farm taught me to be a hard worker, right? And that was kind of etched into my character. I mean, just everything, all of the different jobs have nothing to do with nutrition, but I'm a dietitian looking to be a brand new dietitian. I saw this really good meme and I wanted to share it with you. And it's the managers are looking and they say, "Oh, this is quite a bit of money for someone with no experience." And then the applicant said, "Yes, well, I'm going to need to be paid a lot because I don't know what I'm doing. It's going to be a lot of hard work." You know, I thought that was funny. But using the right time just kind of depends on how you can leverage that inside of the interview. What questions are going to apply to the job? But maybe that's a good idea. Maybe you can take every one of your past jobs and kind of look through it and say, okay, this is really good too. Is I think for every student, they should prepare to write down a conflict that they resolved and it resolved well, right? If it's with the manager, make sure you do not highlight in a negative tone, right? So I think just and that question is kind of it gets a lot of people, I think. Um, so writing down how you've resolved the conflict, keeping that down, going through every one of your jobs and writing out, okay, what did I do from this job and how does it apply to becoming a better dietitian? Write that out. Why not? At least have it in the back of your mind if somebody asks you, okay, so what, Trenton? You were a student ambassador at San Jack. You were a substitute teacher. You worked at Walmart once as an employee. How does that have anything to do with nutrition? Well, none of it does. But let me tell you how I can transfer those skills into this area, right? Because you've already got the degree, you've got the training, you've got the entrance, right? So just I would say the best way to do that is to write out how every one of those things, how every one of those jobs in some unique way made you unique, right? And think about that how it defined you, how it made you a better worker, right? Um, Highlighting working with people is so big. You're going to work with a lot of people.
No, definitely. And I think it's the interview process is tying everything into a neat little bow because, and again, I think it's works out perfectly how we have three different, episodes part of the series where the first one is where do you get that experience of just becoming a better person overall, like where you hone your soft skills, where to kind of work on yourself as an individual while you're going through school. And then the second, when it comes to the job application process, that's where you hone in on refining and being able to present not just your soft skills that you learn from those experiences, but the technical ones. Because again, we have that technical training at that point as being competent to be dietitians. And so
Mhm.
when we do go into those interviews, they know that we are competent enough to be a dietitian because we have our training. But then the purpose of that interview is, well, how do these experiences when becoming a dietitian and getting these hard technical skills shape you into the person that will show up on the job to be that
Mm,
dietitian? And so I think it's just a great natural progression of, starting with those soft skills, starting with those people skills. And then over time, you still chip away at becoming that dietitian at the very end. And then when it comes to what you emphasize during the interview, is that people component of I'm a unique person that brings a unique experience to the table because everyone gets the same. Again, we have these KRDNs that we have to meet. We have these 1,000+ dietetic internship hours that we have to have. So we're all going to have more or less the same like
I
experience
mean,
on paper exactly to bring to these job interviews, but what sets us apart is who we are as a person. And I
mm,
think you've definitely highlighted and emphasized ways that people can make themselves stand out as their own unique person.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned a little bit too about salary, and even one of the conflict resolutions you made with a person as well involved salary. And so that I think is definitely the topic that maybe gets people a bit most nervous, just because you can do research on a company as much as you can about their culture or what type of attire to wear, what types of things to expect in the environment. But then when it comes to salary, that's just it's a much more sensitive topic. And so, when should someone bring up salary during the interview process? And then, how can you ensure maybe sometimes, again, you have to think on your feet? And so, what advice would you give for that whole salary discussion? And how do you know that the benefits regarding, salary, whatever packages they have, align well with the job that you're applying for?
I think this, in large, is where the companies and the organizations should be largely responsible to post a pay range that is reasonable and not too far spread. So, I mean, the less we allow something, the less likely it'll happen. So, I think the first part is just to start with the application process of finding jobs that have some pay range, because that gives me a general idea of what I should expect, right? There were a few jobs, but it was mostly not that I would not apply to a single job that didn't have the pay range on it. So, with that being said, my bar typically, I mean, I believe the only jobs I applied for did have a range of some sort. My bar is that I already know that they have a range. I know their top and their low, right? And it meets something that I'm willing to do. The time to bring that up in an interview, never. I let them guide that 100% because I know their range. So I don't think I I had a friend whose brother did that, and um she knew the manager. Manager said he asked how much he was going to get paid. He seemed kind of like it was going so well and everything was going real well, and he was like he asked how much it's going to pay, and it kind of seemed a little arrogant, or um but that's the thing is like you don't want to be in the wrong place. I wouldn't, and I didn't bring up money one time, not one time. Now the HR brought up money the first time, right? Manager brought up a second time for the job that I actually got. But for like the military, I knew what I was getting right off the bat. I didn't have to ask it, right? But the better question is that if somebody's going to be ambiguous all the way up to the point that they offer you there's some kind of indication to me that this should be an area of concern, because the responsibility should not be passed off on the applicant to know what you're going to pay me. That should be really stated either before I apply, so I know the range, or during the application process. It should not be on me to look what you're trying to offer. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't try, because if it seemed like a real good job, sure, I'd try it. Um, I know we're not all on the same like trajectory, and we have different things that we're able and willing to do. But I would, if it was a good enough job, I probably would just wait for somebody to tell me at the end and just be ready for that, right? Because I don't think during the interview process it's ever appropriate to bring up the money. I don't. Because if I'm not mistaken, I've seen books that mentioned that, hey, if somebody gives you a offer letter in paper, or writing, don't ever take it. No, no. If you object it, uh, say you went through the whole interview process, you didn't know nothing. Like, oh wow, the first good thing that you did was not ask about it. Show some patience. Show some patience. That's good. Um, and say the HR got back to you and they sent you an offer letter with the amount that's being paid on there. Do not take that as concrete. So instead, don't respond to the email with no, can I get XYZ? No, turn around and be like, hey, okay, I saw this number. I really like it. I'd like to talk to you over the phone, right? Um, because if you give people enough time to come up with a good strategy to negotiate with you, a company, HRs, I mean, they are trained to do this, right? But if you have the opportunity, you always want to speak to them over the phone or in person. Don't ever give them the leverage, because they will have leverage machines to offer you percentages. So do not negotiate over. I would not negotiate over emails. Just like, oh, I accept this, I don't. And at the bare minimum, try to get more. I mean, that's fine, but you know. But at any moment, I would stray away from asking about how much this is going to get paid. Um, and that's just out of concern. I would think about it in such a way that if it is possible, I would put myself in a position where I am not immediately required to accept any job just because it pays. You could be in a terrible, terrible job because you felt that you were in a position where you just had to accept the first job. Let's try not to put yourself there if it's possible, right? If it's possible, let's pre-plan this out. Say, so you got like a couple grand set aside, or you're still living with mom and dad. Perfect. Mom and dad, it might take me a couple of months, 3, 4, 5 months to get a job, you know, but I don't want to settle. So give yourself time and space to say no. So in any good negotiation, the only power that you have as the applicant is to say no. That's okay. They don't like that offer. Oh well, you know, no is your friend, and it's hard to say no. Companies know that.
Yeah, and I
So
think
yeah.
especially with the dietetics profession, we're very yes oriented, where it's like, yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, yes, yes. Like, no, everything's fine. But I think it's great that you're stressing the importance of patience and the leverage that you do hold of being able to say no. This is the most powerful and most profound, like it's hard because it's hard to say no in any scenario, but it's even harder to say no when you've been saying yes to everything to build up your experiences, to build up your resume. You think that, oh, I have to say yes to everything to get me to this point. But then again, also knowing that it's okay to say no.
Mhm.
And patience as well, just being a really great thing. And when it came to the phone call, I think it was also a great point too of saying, hey, don't do it over email kind of transition and doing it over to a phone call. How do you go about that conversation? Like, was that what your experience was? Like, or we can go as in depth as topical.
Oh, three.
Yeah.
That happened. I'm recalling two times. That happened two times. Um, the first initial offer with the VA, the VA was email. They emailed me the congratulations acceptance letter. And I did that with the VA. And I was like, hey, can we talk? I would like to talk to you and discuss you about this and that, about, I don't remember what I said, but I wanted to talk to the HR. And he called me, and it's never an easy conversation. It never is. I mean, it's like, okay, so uh, you offer me a 59 with a 10 sign-on bonus. Okay, yeah, that's great. But I would like to get 65 and a sign-on bonus. And the conversation kind of got awkward because he didn't know how to answer that. I don't think he's ever been asked for it. I'm being serious. Like, he didn't know how to answer. He got awkward. I was like, hello, you know. And long story short is he didn't have an answer for me, right? So that was really hard. So like for me, that was really hard because at the same time, just by a strike of fate, I don't know how it happened, but the whole country went on a hiring freeze for all the VAs, for all the military, right? So that happened. So I was just got the offer letter, and then that Monday they called me back because I called them on Friday trying to get more money, and it was only $6,000 more dollars per year, right? Um, but he had to get approval and whatnot. But then they went on a hiring freeze. So then he called me back and he's like, listen, I can't offer you the job. We went on a hiring freeze. This has nothing to do with the questions that you had. Um, but sometimes you got to be willing to take a no too, And then for the other job, it wasn't even that hard, because it wasn't that hard because he called me, and although they had an original 15,000, by the end of the interview, he called me back for the job that I have now. They missed my mark by $3,000, which is what I asked for in the beginning. I didn't even have to negotiate it. I didn't have to negotiate it. But so how did I know what to ask for? How did I know what to ask for? I knew what to ask for because I looked at their pay range for the job that I have. I looked at their pay range, and I just added the two and averaged it out, right? I'm going right in the middle. I'm not going to be paid the least, no way. And there's a certain amount that I am not willing to take below. And um and that's the funny part is I did that, and then I added a couple dollars on. You know? Yeah, why not? Just there's like, I like to say that we all have everything calculated out, but no way. I mean, like, that's not life. Life is sloppy, life is messy, and it just kind of happens to you and you react to it. And if you have a great disposition about it, and you just have a good personality, and you take life, and you just let things go, everything kind of just works out for you. Like, don't mean to get too philosophical, but it is like that in life. And it's just like with all the situations, the VA, they like me, they kind of turned me down, really. I got turned down by the WIC almost immediately when I asked for 70. Um, uh, I tried for CNM. They turned me, a clinical nutrition manager with Sodexo. They turned me down immediately. I mean, there's just like, what is it like? Just keep asking. It's almost like a law of numbers. Just keep asking, keep trying. You'll get what you want if you don't settle, right?
Mhm. And I think it's that persistence. Again, the power words of, just
Persistence. Love it. Yeah.
of where you have your non-negotiables before you go into negotiating, so that you know that what you're willing to be flexible with and then what you're not willing to be flexible with. And you mentioned it in the last episode how, you had a number that you were absolutely not going to go below.
Mhm.
And I think that's really a powerful thing to have going in, because then that helps you know how to exercise saying no. And I think even to your point of that persistence of just continuously practicing, continuously, reaching out, that also helps strengthen that muscle that's kind of atrophied from saying yes to everything over the years,
Mm.
of actually being able to, especially in a situation where it's even more important to be willing to say no or to be willing to walk away, and also being willing to accept a no. And then, because I feel like sometimes too is, okay, you hear them say no, and then you can have your brain etch in and be like, well, maybe I can be a little flexible with it, but being like hard no. Like if they say no, then it's like, okay. Um, so yeah,
Hmm.
really, really great pieces of advice. Not again, not just for the job itself, but also just life in general, things to let go of and how life really does have a way of working out.
Yeah.
And as long as you stay
Yeah.
true to your values and what's important to you, especially in the context of like what will shape your career as being your first step into that workforce as a dietitian, it really does set you up for then, where you go for your second, third job, or if you want to stay in this one. So yeah, all
Yeah.
great things.
Yeah. And let me add this too. If you are in a place, so I have a friend, this friend took a job at a phenomenal position, in a very well reputable place. However, her pay was not at all good. She took the job, and when she took the job, within 4 months, she was wanting a raise because she was not getting paid enough. And that's something I want people to consider is that if you accept less than what you really think you feel like you need, because she has, as do all of us, or well, a high proportion of us have student loans. Right. So think about these things while you're doing it too, right? If you have the ability to, right? Moving is your biggest asset. Being flexible on where you move, that's the biggest asset. Being flexible where you move is the biggest asset to managing and leveraging the most amount of money that you can get, by the way. I mean, just go to places that people don't want to go or travel or or do online, right? For different companies that may not be full time, but you can do two part-time jobs, no problem. I mean, those are offering. I had a few offers for 42, 43 an hour, doing 30 hours a week, right? Like you can figure this out. The biggest thing you do not want to do is accept a job that's well below what you know you need because you have bills you have to pay. That a few months down the road, you may be like, well, I need a raise because this isn't a livable wage. And then they say, well, we don't really give out raises, but every year, once a year. And then if we give you another raise, it's because the whole hospital is getting another raise, right? So think about these things because you don't want to put yourself in a position where like later on you're like, I can't afford to do this. So try really hard and know what your financial situation will be. Because if you know what your financial situation will be and you know you have a base number, then I'm going to tell you like I don't feel like I even need to get a raise. I don't feel like that. I want to earn a raise. I want to feel like I am justified in getting a raise. I'm not looking for it. I feel like I am getting paid what I am worth. And that feeling right there gives me, even though of course, I want more money. I mean, who doesn't want more money, right? Like, but I feel very content because I'm being paid what I feel I am worth. And starting from that basis, right? Just don't accept just any job. You're not going to regret it a few months later being like, I can't do this. Because let me tell you something. You could very well be taking a part-time traveler's job who's making 53 an hour while also getting their housing paid for, while that company's also paying a traveling company. What's that, like couple, maybe $100, 120 an hour? Maybe. That's probably what they're paying. And I wonder, you have to wonder, is like if you're taking a part-time if you're taking somebody's temporary job, those guys are probably making 40 to 50 an hour. If they've been doing it for a while, all the way up into the 53, 55. So if you make less, you might be accepted, right? Like, let's think.
Yeah,
So,
and with the episode I did with Rayanne about negotiating salary, she absolutely, to your point as well, she goes much more, she very much covers the look for housing, look for location, and I'm glad that you emphasize uniquely like the flexibility to move is your greatest asset if you have it, but also when you do go into that application process or the job interviews, that is one of the things that you need to know, is it a non-negotiable or is it not? Like some people just cannot move, and that's okay. But then that means that you have to adjust and be like, well, what am I flexible with? Am I willing to take a lower paying job so
mhm.
that I don't
Yeah,
have to move versus the alternative. And if people want to, go more in depth about the calculation process for, because yeah, Rayanne goes into, researching the area like rent, utilities, commuting, car maintenance, like it's all of those things that you mentioned too. You definitely want to do that leg up research beforehand so that you're not 4, 5, 6 months in being like, I'm trapped. How do I get out? Or this
Hmm.
isn't sustainable. And I'm really, really glad that you did the point of you want to be in a job where you feel earn like you are earned the raise and not like just putting in the work, like putting in work just to try and get a raise right off the bat, because
Hmm.
you want to set yourself up for success before you even step into the door. And I think you brought up a lot of great pieces of advice, tips, and things that people can bring into that job interview so that if they walk out with the job, it truly is the best situation that they can put themselves in and not
Hmm.
feel like you're settling from the
Hmm.
get-go. Because I feel like the
Right.
last thing you want to do is settle before you even get into
Yeah.
the job. So, yeah.
Hmm.
And is there anything as far as, because we covered a lot of, great things about telling your story, how to formulate your story, whether or not to focus on soft skills or hard skills, how to leverage your past experiences, especially if it's your first job that you're applying or interviewing for as a dietitian or a new dietitian. Um, and I'm really glad that even from the beginning we talked about salary, because I definitely think it's something that needs to be talked about more so that we can increase that pay with the master's degree requirement, really making sure that we are paid what we're worth. And I
Hmm.
do think that you've brought in, I also think sharing your experience helps let people know that it is possible. Like it is possible to negotiate salary and be successful. It is possible to really make the most of your RD credential, both financially and just being aligned with your purpose and emotionally for making sure that you choose a job that aligns with you and your goals. But is there anything else or any other pieces of advice that you would want to give aspiring dietitians when it comes to jobs or just the profession as a whole? Because all three of these episodes have really been great insights and information about how people can not only be better dietitians, but just better people in general for when they do search for their first jobs. But just any last remarks, Trenton, or things like that?
I think I've got everything covered.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to have the last, kind of floor splayed out for this three-part series, particularly just involving the job search process. But I know for a fact if people watch it all the way from episode one to this one, episode one of this like kind of three-part series, they'll definitely get a lot out of it. And I'm really thankful that you took the time to sit down for each of these episodes. And if people are interested in seeing more of these types of videos where we talk about, the interview process, just finding jobs, really setting yourself up to be a super successful dietitian, more than happy to have more of those. But Trenton, thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Take care, okay?
Mhm.